Welcome to the CAG Podcast, a discussion-based podcast that moves us to love God, love people, and live to serve. We'll be asking real questions that lead to honest conversations. So here is your host, Pastor Shane Bryant.
Welcome back to the CAG Podcast. Today we're asking the question, how do we handle conflict in a biblical way? And our guest today with us is Pastor Aaron Halavin. He serves currently as a network superintendent. He is a longtime pastor, and he has been a friend and mentor for many years. And so, Pastor Aaron, welcome to our podcast today.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me. And I echo our grateful for our friendship over these many years. So it's been fun.
Can you tell us about your role as network superintendent? Because a lot of people watching, they may not know what I do. I know you're my pastor, but can you communicate that to
I think I know what it is. I'm learning. I've been at it just a little over a year. So people ask me that all the time, what is your role? And so I've learned to summarize it this way, that the mission of every church that I go to is my passion. It's going to be different in every church, and so I want to be an encouragement to pastors, whatever God has in their church, and it's different in a rural, urban, suburban settings. But whatever your mission is here at Charlotte, that's what my passion becomes, and how can I help? How can I encourage? So I provide a lot of support for pastors and churches and transitions and crisis and struggles, and also we're really focusing on building churches to new success, new thriving churches. Our vision is to live healthy lives as ministers, lead thriving churches, and launch into our communities. So we're hoping to see all those three things happen, and having fun. I love people. I love pastors. I love churches. We've got great leaders, great churches, great people, and having fun, figuring out what I'm doing. Takes some time, but I'm enjoying it.
It's been about 2 years now, right?
A year, just over a year.
Just a year.
Just over a year and a couple weeks.
Okay, so fairly new.
Yeah.
You were with us not too long ago.
I was.
You preached both services, and I know the congregation loved you. We heard lots of wonderful things about the message, and it seemed to be a very timely message for us as a congregation. It was what I would call a now word, a rhema word. And so I know I had a lot of feedback, and I would encourage those watching today, if you haven't heard that message from Pastor Aaron, you can go to the website or the app and you can look that up. I know it'll encourage you. It was certainly a word for our church. Great. We always ask this question. We really do believe in growing and developing. And so we want to know, what are you currently reading?
Okay. So it's a book I read once a year, every year for the last 20 years. And it's called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. It's not a spiritual book. It's not a religious book. It's not a Christian focused thing. And it's not even a typical leadership book. It's more of a story of someone's self-discovery. And I read it every year because every year it challenges me to think differently, to dream differently. So I used to give that to my staff. Every staff member had one, and my staff have said they've read it multiple times. And it's just a wonderful, fascinating study. Some people don't like the read. My wife doesn't like it. It doesn't flow like a typical book she would like. Okay. But for me, it really challenges me to think outside the box, to challenge my precepts of what I used to think and how I think, and inspired me to try to be somebody better than I was last year. So it's a great book. I really enjoy it, and I should have brought one for you and gifted it to you.
That would be great.
Yes.
What was the name of the book again?
Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute.
Okay. Is it like a leadership fable? You know, Lencioni has the...
It's similar. It's more of a guy who gets a new job and he goes to work.
Okay.
And he's expecting to start working, but they take him through these exercises of challenging. So, for example, he challenges concepts like... how do we reward? So I'll tell you one quick story in the book. He talks about a family that how his child is always late. And they tell him, the next time you're late, you're grounded. The next time you're late, you're grounded. We've had enough. Your curfew is 11. You better be home. And he says, they hear the squeal of the tires pulling the driveway. The child walks in right at 10:59. And instead of rewarding that, the response is, well, you cut that close. And how we negatively reinforce positive actions often, and where does that come from within someone's life? And so it challenges you down to the deepest levels of who you are. Things like when you're laying in bed and your kid's crying at night, baby's crying, and both spouses are sitting there going, I'm going to act like I'm asleep so the other one gets up.
Nobody would do that.
Nobody.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, Shane, that never crossed your mind.
Never crossed my mind.
But he talks about how we have resentment towards the other spouse for doing the exact same thing we're doing. And why do we do that in our lives? So this book constantly is challenging you to face yourself, and why do we respond and react or not respond and react. So it's a fascinating book of self-discovery if you let it, but it's a different kind of read. But I read it every year. I usually read it in January, February.
Okay.
This year I had other books I was reading, so I got to this, and it's fascinating. So encourage it.
So this is your 20th read of it?
Probably about, I mean, I don't have exactly, but I've been reading it for a long time.
Is it the same book?
No.
Or have you had to have multiple copies?
2 or 3 copies. I've given it to people and then gotten, so it's probably my 10th copy, 8th copy.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, but yeah.
I'm just curious, how many books do you think you read a year? And if I could add a second question to that, do you pre-plan what you're going to read in the coming year?
I hate reading books.
Okay.
I'm extremely dyslexic.
Okay.
I mean, majorly. People ask if they can see my sermon notes. You can't.
Okay.
I have them color coordinated. My
Sure.
eye, I had to teach my eye how to read. But I started a discipline of that. I had gotten up to 1 year I did 32 books in a year. But I would say my average is probably 1 a month.
Okay.
Outside of the Bible and study
Sure.
and stuff like that. And that's a discipline for me. With my driving, I often do a lot of audiobooks.
Okay.
So if you count that as reading, which I do.
I think we do now.
I think we do.
It
I know I
counts.
do.
It counts.
Then my number would be up more around 20, 25 based on the books that I can find.
Okay.
But it's been a discipline I've had to put in my life. It isn't something that came easy to me.
Okay.
My daughter can read 10 books a month. My wife can read 10 books a month. I mean, I don't know if they do, but they can. They love it. But it's hard work for me. So I've learned audiobooks work well, reading a chapter and contemplating. But that's why I read this book over and over and over, is because I really want to get the things out of it. And I try to read everything as if I've never read it before, including
Sure.
the Bible. I read without the end in mind.
Right.
What am I missing? What do I want to know? So it's been a discipline I've worked hard at. So if you count ebooks, maybe 20 plus a
Okay.
year on the average. Hard copy books, maybe 10 to 12
That's
a year
awesome.
would be kind of where I'm at. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to get that book. I'm really intrigued by it. I feel like I want to talk about that book, but I'm not going to because we have a topic at hand.
Sure.
The other thing we like to ask is just, can you tell us about your family?
Yeah. Have a 17-year-old. She'll be 18 tomorrow, and
Happy
she
birthday.
she graduated high school. Had prom last night, and she's an exceptional person. She's just been an easy kid to raise. She loves the Lord. She's headed to a college on the East Coast and doing digital media. She's really gifted that way. And then my youngest is 14. She is just a wonderful, cheerful person. She loves life, loves sports, plays a lot of sports. We're in softball season, had her first game last week.
This is the one you told the story about in church,
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
She when she's really focused, she can really dominate.
Yeah.
But more than that, she really loves people, and she's spectacular. My wife and I have been married 23 years. In June 26th will be our 23rd year. She was my high school. We started dating when we were in high school, and I just never got over her.
No way. You guys started dating in high school?
We did. We didn't go to the same high
realize
school.
that.
We met
Okay.
at youth group, but we broke up once or
Wait,
twice.
you met in youth group?
Yep, at youth group.
All right.
at
Our
church.
students listening, they need to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was a youth group I ended up pastoring at that church, So we've been there a long time, but she still makes my heart jump every time I see her, and she's just my best friend and my favorite person. And, my girls one time said, "Do you love us or God more than mom?" And I said, "No, I love God most.
Yeah.
Because when I love God most, I love your mom best."
Yeah.
And I said, "And the greatest gift I can give you girls is a healthy marriage."
Yeah.
So watch this and grow from it. And so I asked them the other day how we were doing, And they said mostly good.
Mostly good.
I don't know what that means.
I'd say that's like a strong A.
I'll take that's a strong A minus.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay,
take
an A
that.
minus.
I got to find out what we're missing though. So, but yeah, that's my family and 2 girls, and we have a girl dog. So I'm really outnumbered 4-1. But it's been wonderful. It's my favorite thing I've ever done in life is be a dad.
That's awesome.
And be married to Jamie outside of faith. It's just been. They're the best.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have some wonderful people in my life.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Last quick question
Yeah.
off the cuff. What is one thing you wish people knew about you?
Well, actively right now, it's pretty shameful. I've always thought that eternity apart from God would be listening to country music all the time. I just hated country music. I don't know what's happened, but sometime during COVID, I started liking country music. So that's something nobody really knows about me right now except my family, and they're very disappointed in me.
I'm a little taken back by that, actually.
I am too. I was shocked. I don't know what happened, but
I mean, how does that happen?
I don't know if I was depressed during COVID or what, and started reacting to the emotions of it. But I don't know. Driving over here today, I was listening to some country music, and I said, "What is wrong with me?" But I love it. So that's one thing.
So you have self-awareness.
I do.
Why?
I do.
Why do I like this?
And I really have. I switch musical genres all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, I just am into that. So that's one thing, and I don't know if I have another one, but that's the current one.
That's the best one so far.
It's pretty shameful though.
That's the best one I've heard so far. Yeah.
For all of you who love country music, I apologize for criticizing it.
I actually went to a Garth Brooks concert one time.
You did?
I was probably 12 years old.
Okay.
And I kind of went through, I'm from Texas. I had a short country phase. Yeah. And I could still sing the song "The Rodeo."
You can.
I've never forgot it.
Why don't you do that right now?
No, I don't think so. They don't want to hear me sing, but
what other confessions about music do we need to know about you? You went to a Garth Brooks concert.
Huh? It was wild. Okay. He was anyway. Well, but I'm over it. I got through it.
Well, I'm in it.
Apparently,
right
you're
now.
just starting.
I'm struggling.
Yeah, a late bloomer there.
Send me to a counselor. Yeah. I'll get through it.
Well, Pastor, and you brought up a good topic there with COVID. It's fresh in all of our minds.
Yeah.
We're past it. We're believing and hoping, and certainly you're seeing churches go back to, I don't even know back is the right word, move forward. Can I say that? We're seeing society move forward. We're seeing life return to normal or somewhat normal. Mm-hmm. But COVID really brought out a lot of conflict. It brought out conflict in our churches. Certainly society at large. Yeah. It seemed like there was conflict everywhere. And
it wasn't just COVID. It was everything that happened during
Everything that happened during COVID. There was racial unrest. Yep. There was a lot of social anxiety, political. Yeah. And so I know for me, I've never liked conflict. I've never liked conflict my entire life. Yeah. I'm not sure. I saw a lot of healthy conflict growing up. Mm-hmm. It seemed to be two extremes. There was no conflict, and then things would blow up. Right. And so, as a teenager, I didn't understand myself enough to know that I didn't like conflict. Right. In my 20s, I didn't understand myself to know I didn't like conflict. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got my 30s, I realized that conflict was the single most stressful situation I faced.
Sure,
it kept me up at night. Oh, yeah. The idea that I had to have conflict, or if somebody stirred up conflict. And so I realized that most of the time when it comes to conflict, we either avoid it, just I hope this goes away.
Absolutely, right.
Or there are people listening that love it, and they're looking for conflict. And they're the ones on Facebook that shouldn't say that, I guess. But it seems like there's those two extremes. And so I really learned a long time ago that I don't like conflict. And so when I was thinking about what can we communicate to our church and how can we help our church, the question I had was, how do we handle conflict in a biblical way? Right. So that's why I brought you. You're the network superintendent. Sure. And I know that over the years, when I've had conflict, I've called you. Yeah. And you always had a now word for me. And you always gave me real practicals. So let me ask you this question. Yeah. Is conflict bad?
Right. I define conflict in two different ways.
Okay.
Is conflict bad, meaning is it bad to have shared mutual respect while debating an issue from different sides, different angles? That can be very healthy. You and I are working on a project together, and we used to use this phrase in our staff at our church I pastored. I want to push back on that for a minute. If you're pushing back on a concept or an idea for the mutual benefit of the organization or the person you're working with,
Okay.
with respect, I think conflict in the terms of working through issues from different angles can be very healthy. In fact, I think it's necessary in organizations to have a measure of that. If by conflict it means I'm right and you're wrong and I'm going to prove you're wrong, or I have to be right, or we cross that boundary where it becomes personal attacks,
Okay.
we're not attacking the problem, we're dealing with a person, then I think it can be very unhealthy in most cases. There's always conflict in life. It's a measure of what you focus on through the conflict versus if the conflict consumes you. So I think conflict in the context of disagreeing sides working through for a mutual good with respect and honor, yet tough conversations, that can be very healthy. It's when the parent says to a child, if you don't get your grades up, you may not be able to go to your next phase of life, or you're spending money on your credit cards every month. We're as a family overspending and we're getting in debt. Well, I like spending. I don't like you spend. And that can be a healthy
Right.
conflict, because if you don't resolve that,
Right.
you're going to end up in trouble.
Right.
So those are good. But
Yeah.
if the goal is to control, to gain something emotionally by fighting with other people, then I think it's very unhealthy.
Sure.
So it depends on how you approach conflict and what the goal is. Is it for my benefit, my
Sure.
reputation, my success?
Right.
Or is it for the success of the person I'm working alongside? I've learned that people in my life who are really for me, and I know it, I'm less threatened by conflict in conversations than people who I think are against me
Okay.
or not for me,
Right.
because I don't know if I have trust. So trust has to be part of where that conflict goes.
That's very good. Trust is very important
Yeah.
with conflict.
Very much.
You're really saying also motivation matters.
Motivation matters. Maybe motivation and trust are probably the two primary
Motivation and
factors.
trust.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think I had to learn this, and I think Pastor Leach really helped me understand this.
Yeah.
I can choose long-term pain or short-term pain.
Right.
And when it comes to, I would say, healthy conflict, with the right motivation and trust,
Yeah.
you can really choose short-term pain.
Yep.
Or you can avoid something that needs to be addressed, and you're choosing long-term pain.
Right.
And
I call it redemptive pain.
redemptive pain.
Redemptive pain has a purpose down the road. It's Jesus talking to Peter.
Yeah.
I want to restore you.
Right.
But I've got some questions for you. It's
Wait, can I
Yeah.
say that? I want to restore you, but I have some questions for you.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to use that.
yeah, steal it.
I
Steal
like
it.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's redemptive pain is for a moment
Sure.
for a better outcome. So if you ignore certain things, the outcome's going to come. It's just a matter of do you walk that out. But the negative side of that is when people say, I have a solution and I'm in search of the problem and it's you.
Yeah.
You know, it's when someone's gotten to a solution without you
Right.
and they're going to force you down that road. That motivation
It's really good.
is not a motivation that's going to build on that mutual trust. It's about
Okay.
the win versus, it's not who's right, it's what's right. And motivation brings us to what's right,
That's
not
really
who's
good.
right. That's the difference between motivation and trust. If you've got to be right, so I have to be willing in conflict to lose
Right.
if it's the right thing for the whole. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
That makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense.
Yeah.
It's not who's right, it's what's right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like
and,
that.
and I didn't make that phrase up.
I like
Pastor
that.
Kerry Waldy from Traverse City
Carrie
said
Waldy.
that to me once.
Thank you, Pastor Kerry.
Yes, Pastor
Yeah.
Kerry said that to me
That's-
once in a
that's
conversation, and I was like, I like that. I'm going
That's
to use
amazing.
that. So yeah.
But if you repeat it like 10 times, doesn't it become yours?
Well, I think it's like 50 times.
50?
So I'm only at 30, so I'm
Okay,
giving Kerry
we'll
credit,
get there.
so, yeah.
You said something that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
You said having the understanding it's about the problem, not the person.
Yeah.
And I think when we get heated or we get upset or irritated, if I can use those words,
Sure. Yeah.
it can be hard to know if this is about the problem or if we've kind of drifted into the area of personhood.
Correct.
Do you have any advice on how do we check ourselves really quick? So there's a problem, we need to address it.
Right.
Maybe it's stewed below the surface. Is there something we can self-regulate to know this has become too personal and it's about the person now, or I'm really addressing it because there's a problem?
In every conflict I've ever had, the first thing I do is start with myself, not the other person. So let's say you and I are having a conflict. I don't say it out loud, and I don't say it internally. I don't go into my wife and say, Shane and I got in this argument. What's wrong with him? I don't say to myself, man, Shane's a jerk. I don't do that. I start with me and say, why am I reacting to this?
Right.
So the first thing to check your motivation is, why am I reacting so negatively to this?
Sure.
Most of the time in life, I discover it's something within myself.
Okay.
It's so I had a guy at our church one time that I pastored. He came to me and he said, I want to tell you, I like you, but I don't love you. I love you because of Christ. I don't like you.
Okay.
And I want you to know I'm watching every single thing you do, and anything you do wrong, I'm going to bring to your attention. I said, okay. That felt personal. Well, 6 months later, his friend in the church comes to me and says, hey, Pastor, I just want to mention something. On Sunday, your screen slide had the wrong scripture reference. Just a mistake. It just got typed in wrong. And my first reaction was, how dare you come to me? And I had to examine, because what really I was reacting to is, he's good friends with this guy. Are they doing this together? And they weren't.
Right.
This guy was trying to help me. So I find most conflict is internally motivated to something or connected to something in my own life that's deficient.
Right.
So the first thing I do is examine myself. 80% of my conflict emotions go away to peace when I deal with myself first. I find in those other 20%, then I realize it's probably an issue. So I like to deal with things before it's a problem while it's still an issue. But 80% of the time, I resolve inside myself quickly. I've learned to discover between core and culture.
Okay.
So as a pastor, cultural things in a church are, I don't like the paint color of a wall. I don't like the temperature. The worship music's too loud, too soft. Your sermons go too long. Worship needs to be longer, shorter. Those things.
Sure.
Those are things I decided people don't have to agree with me on.
Okay.
In leadership, they don't. As a pastor, when people would come to me and say, I don't like those things, I'd say, you don't have to like those things. That's okay.
Right.
And it was disarming to people because I didn't need a conflict and they don't have to like it. Now, if they told me that Jesus wasn't the Son of God, now we're going to have that's a core issue.
Right.
So most of our conflicts, I think, are unnecessary.
Right.
Because we're making cultural things core instead of allowing core to remain core. So we're getting offended America's offended about everything. That's another great book. Unoffendable is another great book.
I have it. Yes.
We gave
Thank
it
you,
to
Pastor
pastors.
Aaron.
Yeah, we gave it out at council because everyone's offended over everything right now.
Right.
And so the reason for that is we're making cultural issues that aren't really that important core issues. And we're willing to die on the hill of some issue that really isn't an issue you should. So how do you navigate that? I start with myself. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I reacting this way? What's the root issue in me? And most of the time, it's my own issue, and it's not even the person on the other side of me.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the CAG Podcast. You just watched part 1 of a 2-part series, and we release the podcast every other Thursday, so be looking out for part 2 coming soon. If you have any questions that you would like to be featured on the CAG Podcast, you can go ahead and ask them at gellerton@charlotteag.org. That's GELARTON@charlotteag.org. And don't forget that we gather on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and 11:15. As well as Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. we gather for prayer, and youth and children's gather together as well. If you have any other questions, want to see upcoming events, you can go to our website at charlotteag.org. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day.